under a heavy southern sky where sprinklers ticked in rhythm and golf carts buzzed like insects. Hank Morrison rolled into what he thought would be the peaceful final chapter of his life. At 63. Recently widowed and still wearing the grief like a familiar coat. He had relocated to Briarwood Oaks with his 13-year-old daughter, Eliza, born with muscular dystrophy. Eliza was the reason Hank sold the family farm, traded in his pride for a specialized van, and moved into a flat. A HOA-governed suburb with smooth sidewalks and wide doorways. The house was modest, the community sterile. No neighbors came to welcome them. The only acknowledgement of their arrival came from drawn blinds and the quiet judgment of conformity. It wasn't the kind of place that welcomed imperfection. And Hank's battered mobility van was a visual affront to that carefully curated image. The van wasn't beautiful, but it was perfect. It had a lift for Eliza's chair, extra space for her therapy gear, and the kind of rugged reliability you only get from decades of fixing engines with your bare hands. The first time they rolled out the ramp, a man across the street watering his lawn froze mid-spray. His eyes locked on Eliza like she was an alien being. She had asked, "Dad, is something wrong with my face?" "Nothing at all, sweetheart," Hank had replied. Some people just aren't used to courage. But the worst wasn't the stares. It was Cassandra Marks, a woman with fluorescent nails and an eternal yoga outfit, who introduced herself by not saying hello. She stood at the edge of her manicured lawn like a sentinel and pointed at the sidewalk where Hank had briefly paused the van. "That's city property," she said, her voice dipped in sweet venom. "We try not to block it here." Hank nodded. "Just unloading my daughter. Won't be long." She smiled, tight-lipped. One day it's 5 minutes, then 10. Next thing you know, it's a parking lot. It wasn't about the sidewalk. It was about control. Over the next few weeks, Cassandra made her rounds in her baby blue golf cart like she was patrolling a kingdom, when a fake sign appeared on the greenbelt reading "Golf Cart Access Only." Hank didn't say a word. When Cassandra commented on Eliza's coordination as she struggled up the driveway, Hank kept his silence. But when she suggested they start using the rear alley so older residents wouldn't feel overwhelmed by the van, Hank simply asked, "Are you worried they'll be overwhelmed by wheelchairs too?" Then came the morning it all broke. Hank had an early therapy appointment for Eliza. Everything was prepped. But when he opened the front door, Cassandra's golf cart was parked sideways across the driveway. A "Do Not Tow" sign dangled from the windshield, and the battery had been visibly disconnected. Eliza rolled out behind him. "Is that her cart?" Hank didn't answer. He stared at the obstruction. Checked the time. Towing would take 2 hours. No help from neighbors. Just the two of them. He walked into the garage and returned with an industrial chain, the kind used to drag engine blocks. He didn't yell, didn't rant. He wrapped the chain around the cart's axle, hooked the other end of the van, and began towing it across the cul-de-sac. The cart scraped, bounced, and finally hung from an old oak tree like some bizarre ornament. Then he loaded Eliza and drove off like nothing happened. For 2 days, the street held its breath. Cassandra reappeared with a limp and a tarp over her cart. She called the cops. The officer, to his credit, calmly listened to Hank's version and left with nothing more than a suggestion to start a logbook. Then the war turned cold. Anonymous letters, fake HOA notices, a pink toy wheelchair mailed in a box with the words, "Maybe scale it down next time." Trash cans mysteriously blocking the ramp. A severed battery cable. Hank said nothing but documented everything. Cassandra was too smart to be obvious. But the patterns were undeniable. Then came the turning point. A neighbor slipped him a warning about a secret community alignment meeting. Hank didn't go. Instead, he sent his lawyer's letter outlining the harassment, complete with timestamps and photos. Days later, he received an official-looking cease and desist accusing him of creating a hostile environment. That same week, a drone appeared. It hovered above the backyard, watching, reminding Hank he was being observed. He installed a jammer, and then he made his move. He filed a complaint under the state's disability rights preservation statute. No names, just documented patterns. Then he contacted a journalist from a disability advocacy publication. The article that came out didn't name Cassandra but laid bare everything she'd orchestrated. It hit hard. Suddenly, the county got involved. Inspectors began measuring sidewalks and ramps. Citations were handed out. Cassandra's house went dark. Her cart disappeared. And slowly, Eliza began reading on the porch again. There were no apologies, no casseroles or welcome back barbecues. Just absence, silence, lawn chairs left in garages, conversations that paused when Hank passed by, and eventually, a moving truck. Cassandra was gone. The street didn't become friendly, but it became honest. Some neighbors offered nods. One left a potted plant by the ramp. Another apologized to Eliza directly. Hank never threw a party. He didn't need to, because for the first time in months, his daughter didn't flinch at shadows. And that, he decided, was the only victory worth counting. They didn't win by fighting. They won by staying.